Hi everyone, welcome to Instructional Design the Real World, the podcast where we focus on practical strategies that can make a real impact in your work. I'm your host, Cortney Grabski, and today we're diving into a topic that every leader faces at some point, addressing and closing performance gaps with one of your direct reports. Performance issues are never easy, but with the right approach, leaders can guide their team members towards improvement while strengthening trust and accountability. Today we'll explore best practices for closing performance gaps, including how to identify the root cause, how to set clear expectations, and provide support, while keeping the process positive and productive. So as we get started, let's kind of focus on recognizing and addressing performance issues first. So, in any team, we're going to see varying levels of skills and output. That's completely normal. And there will be some fluctuation in performance that's very natural. But a performance gap is when there's a sustained deviation between the employee's performance and the expectations of their role. The first step is addressing this in some sort of observation. A great leader needs to be objectively evaluating whether this is a true performance gap that has a consistent pattern or if this is just a temporary issue. Things like project delays, missed deadlines, or a decline in quality of work can be signals of a larger issue. It's critical to approach this observation phase with empathy. Right? We are leading people. Humans, we need to bring a level of empathy to the work that we do. And sometimes what seems like a performance issue might have an external factor, like personal circumstances or a misalignment in role expectations. Now, once you've identified a real and consistent performance gap, it's time to begin addressing it. And that starts with one of the most powerful tools a leader has: communication. So let's talk a little bit about initiating a constructive conversation around a performance issue. The first step is setting up a conversation with your employee. This should be a safe space and an open environment where they feel comfortable sharing their perspective with you. The goal is to have a constructive, non-confrontational conversation that fosters mutual understanding and cooperation. But as a leader, you should start by being transparent. Let that person know what specific issues you've observed and share examples so they understand the scope and impact. Remember, stick to objective language. Focus on facts, not opinions. For instance, instead of saying, "Your work has been disappointing," you might say, "I've noticed that 2 recent projects were delayed, and that had an impact on our timeline." Once you've shared your observations, it's time to listen. And this is really important. Often we find that performance issues stem from a misunderstanding or obstacles that can be managed by leadership. Listening shows that you're interested in helping them succeed and not just fix a problem. So, let's focus a bit now on how we're going to diagnose the root cause of the performance gap. After listening, it's time to digest all the information your direct report has told you and dig into the root cause of the issue. This is essential because you can't close a performance gap if you're only treating the symptoms. There are many possible causes for a performance issue, but they'll typically fall into a couple of categories: skill gaps, lack of clarity on a role, motivation issues, or external challenges. For instance, if an employee doesn't have the skills necessary for their task, the solution could be training. But if they lack motivation, the issue could be stemming from a lack of engagement or a mismatch in job responsibilities. Honestly, sometimes it's just not a right fit. And if it's an external challenge, like a personal issue or stress, it might be a matter of offering flexibility or support. A great way to structure this diagnostic process is by using open-ended questions to explore the potential causes. So for example, you might ask, do you feel like you have all the resources you need to meet your goals? Or, is there anything in particular that's been affecting your ability to stay on track? Where can I help you? Do you have any roadblocks? Something that's incredibly important that takes some practice and a good understanding is setting clear expectations and crafting a performance improvement around those expectations. So once you understand your root cause, the next step is to set clear, achievable goals and create an improvement plan that you and your direct report can collaborate on. Now, this is a very structured approach to help any employee close a performance gap with specific and measurable actions. And those specific, measurable actions are key. So anytime you're putting together any kind of performance plan or coaching plan, you want to be specific in your goals. So outline what the employee needs to achieve to meet expectations. Be very clear. Vague statements like improved communication don't work. Instead, say something like ensure all project updates are communicated to the team by the end of each week. Make sure that you have measurable metrics. So you want to define for your employee how success will be measured. This could be metrics like complete 95% of deadlines on time or reduce errors by 30%. Now, timeline. Having things time-bound is very important. So set a reasonable timeline for these improvements. This gives the employee a clear sense of urgency, but also a fair amount of time to work on their goals. Support resources, such as identifying any resources for training, mentorship for the employee. This is really important because it shows that you're invested in their improvement and that you're not just checking things off a list. Now, having checkpoints, scheduling regular checkpoints to monitor progress are phenomenally important for a couple of reasons. So these checkpoints help you gauge if the employee is on track. It's giving you an avenue to provide additional feedback, and it allows the employee to voice any challenges they're facing. So now that we've talked through some of that, let's focus on how we're going to offer constructive feedback. One of the best things a learner can do during any improvement period is to offer consistent and constructive feedback. Regular check-ins, as we've mentioned, provide a chance for you to reinforce positive changes and course correct any things that still need improvement. And here's a tip. When giving feedback, aim to be as specific and actionable as possible. Maybe you're seeing a bit of a theme here, right? A helpful method for feedback is the SBI method: situation, behavior, impact. So for instance, here's an example. The situation. In your project status meetings last week, the behavior, you provided detailed updates on your tasks and outlined next steps. Impact. That made it easy for the team to understand what to expect and keep everything on track. By framing your feedback this way, you're showing that the behavior change has a positive impact on the team or the project, which can be very motivating. Another important piece of this puzzle is providing encouragement in celebrating progress. Closing a performance gap can be challenging, and it's essential to provide encouragement throughout the process. Acknowledging each step forward, no matter how small, celebrating those incremental wins not only boosts the employee's morale, but it also reinforces those positive behaviors. When an employee sees their progress recognized, it helps build confidence and a sense of ownership over their improvement. This is especially important if the performance gap has been ongoing or if the employee has been struggling with some self-doubt. Remember, your role as a leader is not just to correct, but to support. Now, kind of bringing this all together, we're getting to the point where now we're making some final decisions and moving forward. As the improvement period concludes, you'll need to evaluate the results and decide on next steps. Now, ideally, the employee has met or exceeded all of their goals and the performance gaps are closed. And in that case, just continue providing reinforcement, help them establish a plan to maintain their improved performance. However, if the gap remains, it's essential to have an honest and respectful conversation about what's next and engage your HR partners. The key to this is to handle it with empathy and integrity, ensuring that you've provided every reasonable opportunity for improvement. So, what are some things we can do, some best practices for maybe preventing performance gaps from cropping up on your teams in the first place? So, before we wrap up, I want to touch on some preventative best practices. So performance gaps can often be avoided by setting clear expectations from the beginning, providing ongoing feedback, and creating an open and supportive work environment. Onboarding and training is important. Comprehensive onboarding and training helps your employees start with a solid foundation. Make sure they understand their role and have the skills they need to succeed. Regular check-ins, whether you're doing a monthly one-on-one, a bi-weekly one-on-one, or maybe you're doing just a weekly touch point that could be 15 minutes every week. Don't wait for an annual review to provide feedback. Regular one-on-ones give you a chance to address any minor issues before they become major problems. Encouraging open communication. It's important that you create a culture on your team where employees feel comfortable discussing challenges or asking for support. This allows you to identify and address process problems and issues early on. So let's recap a bit. Supporting and closing performance gaps with a direct report involves a few things: open communication, diagnose the root cause, setting clear goals, offering constructive feedback, and providing encouragement along the way. As leaders, we have the responsibility not just to correct, but to coach, support, and guide our teams towards success. I want to thank you all so much for tuning in to Instructional Design, the Real World. I hope today's episode has given you practical tools and insights for addressing performance issues in a way that's both effective and supportive. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider subscribing and leaving a review. As always, if there's a topic you'd like to hear more about, reach out and let me know. Until next time, keep learning, keep leading, and keep empowering your team to reach their full potential. Thanks for listening.